afternoon. Thank you for joining us at the Lee County Commissioners Workshop on Code Enforcement. It's December 2nd. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. County Manager Horner, I'd like to kick it off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we're going to provide you with the code enforcement update. Back the previous budget workshop, or during the budget process, the board added 3 positions to code enforcement. And this past August, the board asked us to look at specifically nuisance accumulation as well as other code enforcement updates. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Mora, and then I think he's going to turn it over to Mickey.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity for our team to be able to present today on some code enforcement updates. I'm really proud of the team. They got some direction from the board. They've embraced this whole philosophy of continuous improvement. I think what you'll see today, that is evident. This is a continuous process. We'd like to continue to provide better services to our community. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mickey.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Since taking the role of Community Development Director about 2 years ago, I've focused on strengthening our department's performance and culture. We've made meaningful improvements to customer service, turnaround times, communication, transparency, and overall staff morale. These efforts have resulted in faster permitting, fewer industry complaints, improved responsiveness, and overall more predictable outcomes for our customers and partners. Today's presentation focuses on improvements being made within code enforcement, one of DCD's key operational areas. Will Diaz, who is our code enforcement manager, is going to lead you through the presentation, starting with our legal framework within which we work, followed by a snapshot of our volume and metrics. He'll then walk you through the code enforcement process and highlight several of our most visible case types. Now, these aren't technically our most the case types that we have the most volume of, but these are the ones that you and I receive phone calls on. So he's going to touch on those. And then we'll close with a look at the ongoing process improvements in code enforcement, and these are improvements that reflect our continued commitment to enhancing services across DCD. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Will Diaz, and he's joined today by members of his team and our interdepartmental partners, including Solid Waste, Human and Veteran Services, and our agency partners, who include the Sheriff's Office, and several other agencies that are here to support us and you in our efforts to provide code enforcement in unincorporated Lee County. And so I'll turn it over to Will.
Thank you, Mickey. And thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to present on this topic and your continued support of the code enforcement section for making changes to enhance our abilities. First, I'd like to start with the legal framework. The source which drives our authority is Florida Statute 162. It also prohibits code enforcement to investigate anonymous complaints and requires the complainants to provide their names and addresses. Examples of some regulations that we do enforce is which is where zoning, land use, development standards, and environmental protections are referenced when we cite violation cases. Some cases reference the Code of Ordinances, which covers property maintenance and nuisance abatement. Our Lee County Administrative Code lays out the hearing procedures for code enforcement and our hearing examiner to provide the violation order, to set the daily fine rates, and to schedule a final inspection for compliance. We continuously partner with the Lee County Sheriff's Office, and our point of contact being Commander Alan Canfield for situations that go beyond our authority, such as squatter situations. So understanding the legal framework gives us the structure, but the numbers tell us the story. This activity map shows a consistent spread of violations across unincorporated Lee County. You'll find that Lehigh Acres has a high activity area, which accounts for about 40% of our complaints and violations. And because of that, 50% of our enforcement field team are assigned to this area. In addition to those personnel, we also have 3 solid waste enforcement specialists dedicating 13 countywide personnel to the Lehigh Acres area. You'll also see on the map, there's a high activity in North Fort Myers, representing about another 15% of code enforcement's complaints and violations. We regularly review our inspection districts to strategically assign staff based on growth data. And with the activity map in mind, the next step would be to look at the volume of work that our staff are managing. So since my transition into this role, I've pushed for more proactive enforcement. And while the public often assumes our work is mostly complaint-driven, the reality is that about 75% of our cases are initiated by our field team. This is apparent where the complaints have remained relatively the same year over year, while the violations continue to increase year over year. And with the board's support approving additional staff, the caseload per specialist has continued to increase year over year as well. Now, understanding the workload is only part of the picture, so let's transition to a typical case process. Everything begins with either a public submitted complaint or by one of our staff proactively identifying noncompliance. An initial inspection is conducted within 3 business days of receiving the complaint. If a violation exists, we issue a formal notice to the property owner and give them 30 days to correct the issue voluntarily. If the issue isn't resolved, a final notice goes out 30 days prior to a scheduled hearing. At a code enforcement hearing, the hearing examiner may issue an order and schedule a final inspection for compliance weeks to months out. If abatement is still not achieved, a lien may be filed on the property. And it's a structured process that can take 12 plus months to achieve abatement. But it's important to note that our abatement rate, based on the most complete data set available for the combined years of 2023 and 2024, reflect an approximate 90% abatement rate. So the next few slides will highlight case types that generate the greatest public interest. These cases are unique in how they are cited, inspected, and investigated. I'd like to start with the permitted use cases, which involve a property being used in such a way that it's not zoned for. Everything from unpermitted businesses in residential zone properties to people living in RVs and campers in those residential zone properties. The photos you see are an example of a business operating in a residential zone property, and after 2 years of noncompliance, we achieved voluntary compliance from the property owner recently through collaboration with our partner agencies and communicating with the property owner. These cases are more complex with the high burden of proof to establish noncompliance. Low fine impositions and after-hour investigations contribute to some of the challenges we face. Although we are exploring options and opportunities for alternative shift schedules to cover weekends on a more regular basis. Commercial vehicle enforcement went from 384 cases created last year to 757 created cases this year. A big reason for that jump is our strengthened partnership with the Lee County Sheriff's Office, which has helped us spot and resolve these cases more effectively. The good news is that abatement numbers are strong. So far, we have resolved nearly 650 cases this year. We're also expanding our outreach and education so the community has a clearer understanding of what the Land Development Code requires and how to stay in compliance with that code. Additionally, some communities may benefit from private parking facilities. Now, unsafe structures continue to be one of the most resource-intensive parts of our work. Due to the level of complexity in these cases, a standard case generally spans roughly 9 months from the initial inspection to the point of county abatement. These involve buildings that are structurally unsound, storm damaged, deteriorated, or just generally unsafe for occupancy. Funding is the biggest challenge with these case types, although we've already begun addressing this by working with the county administration to secure funding for the demolition of 28 properties, which ultimately resulted in a board-approved contract. And we will continue to work with the county administration to pursue additional funding moving forward for these cases. This is an example of a property where we collaborated with Human and Veteran Services, the Lee County Sheriff's Office, and the property owner to remove the squatters from that unsafe structure. Once that was resolved, we walked the owner through what needed to be done to remove nuisance accumulation and how to demolish the unsafe structure. And after 5 years, we were recently finally able to close these cases. Nuisance accumulation cases involve discarded materials, inoperable, unregistered vehicles, creating unsanitary conditions. The pictures on this slide indicate a nuisance accumulation that was not being addressed. This is a good example of how collaborative these cases can be. Human and Veteran Services were contacted to offer resources to the property owner, and our code enforcement staff worked closely with the owner and with solid waste to schedule curbside bulk pickups. Code enforcement also made regular site visits to keep the cleanup on track. The cases remained open for 8 years, and our recent efforts, which I just outlined successfully, brought them to resolution. It should be noted that these efforts require significant time, including maintaining regular communication with the property owners for education and guidance. Historically, nuisance cases were imposed low daily fine amounts, providing challenges to staff to motivate property owners towards abatement. Now let's look at the ongoing improvements shaping how we address the cases moving forward. Sorry, I've got to click around just for a second, because I would like to start with our new educational tool. It's our nuisance accumulation story map. This gives residents a clear understanding of the nuisance accumulation enforcement process. It walks users through how we cite violations, how to identify different types of violations, and it includes interactive photos showing before and after situations that have been resolved. And it also lets the public search live cases. Users can view case details such as the date the case was created, the current case status, the daily fine amounts, when those daily fines began, and if they've ended. These features are live updates, and they represent a step forward in providing the public with transparency into our operations. We also explain the differences between illegal dumping and nuisance accumulation and which agency handles which type of violation. And finally, there's contact information. Finally, it provides contact information for requesting code enforcement for community events or association meetings, and also contact information if someone wants to submit a complaint to be investigated. Now I want to move into our program improvements that strengthen our enforcement capabilities. The board provided direction to increase the daily fine limit in the Land Development Code from $250 a day to $1,000 a day. Code enforcement staff have begun requesting higher daily fine amounts when presenting cases at a hearing. The hearing examiner is not consistently aligned with these higher amounts, and as a result, the average daily fine imposed since the update remains approximately $75 per day. We also streamlined the notice process for nuisance accumulation cases. This has shortened the timeline for moving a case forward to when a property isn't coming into compliance and increasing enforcement for the county to conduct cleanup operations. An additional benefit of this streamline is the reduction in cases being sent to a hearing. Another significant improvement was code enforcement's request for the hearing examiner to add a second hearing date to the biweekly hearing schedule, decreasing the time between an initial inspection and when a case is scheduled to be presented at a hearing. We're also expanding our public outreach to better inform, educate, and engage with the public. We're leaning heavily into early intervention, a more proactive monitoring by regularly pulling our volume metrics, a warning system which other local code enforcement agencies confirm to have high abatement rates prior to sending a violation case to the property owner, and updating our notices and codes to achieve better communication on the pathways towards resolution. We're also focused on predictability and transparency, which includes reducing inconsistencies and offering clearer pathways towards compliance. Even small changes in this category can make the process feel more accessible to the public. We're expanding our outreach efforts as well, such as attending community events and association meetings to educate residents on the rules and the reasons behind those rules. And finally, partnerships remain one of our strongest tools, whether it's coordination with internal departments or strengthening partnerships with external agencies. Collaboration is what makes the entire system functioning smoothly. We've made significant progress this year. We're handling more volume than ever. And despite the challenges that we face, I feel we're moving in the right direction. So with this, I leave you with two questions. Are these improvements aligned with your vision? And is there anything else you'd like for the team to consider? And thank you for your time.
Any questions this time for staff? Mr. Wayne?
Would you do me a favor, would you go back to your slides, please?
Yes, sir.
There's some questions, you went through it rather quickly, so go back to, I guess I'll go back to the legal framework. I'll walk
Yes, sir.
through my questions. So how do you work with the conflict in the state statute where you anonymously is supposed to not necessarily be no anonymous complaints, yet there is some protection for people to feel their safety, well-being. How do you balance those two?
Unfortunately, the statute is very clear. It is very clear. And we do our best to educate the public on how that statute is written. And it's very specific. We cannot investigate anonymous complaints, and the person must submit a name and address. If there's an issue with retribution or concerns on retribution or identity theft, then we refer those folks to the Lee County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you for the answer.
Yes, sir.
Your volume matrix?
Yes, sir.
So maybe help educate me. You indicate that 75% of total violations are obviously staff initiated. Can you give me some examples of staff initiated? You're 75%, so 3/4 of the complaints you're determining internally. So I'm trying to understand, how do you do that?
So,
Examples.
yes, sir. So staff initiated would be while the staff are working in their assigned areas. I want to make sure I'm answering your question in its entirety.
Just trying to look at point number one.
Sure. So these are the complaints that are submitted by, I'm sorry.
I'm just looking at your bullet number one.
Yes, sir.
Violations have steadily increased due to the proactive identification.
Yes, sir.
Staff-initiated violations. Just trying to understand. That's 3/4 of them. What are they? Just examples, just so I have clarity.
The violation types, they're different violation types.
75% you say are staff-initiated.
Correct.
Give me some examples of how you initiate those items.
Well, okay, so while they're working in their assigned areas, after they're done with their task list for the day, if they have re-inspections or if they have complaints to investigate, once they're done, if they identify the non-compliance within their area, then they would create a case. And that is not associated with a complaint that is submitted by the public. And so those cases created that our staff have identified in the field while working in the field, those are self-initiated. This first column here on the left, those are complaints that are submitted by the public. These are violations that resulted from those complaints, and these are violations that our staff identified while working in the field and created staff-initiated violations.
How many people in the field?
We have a total of 20 field staff. 22, I apologize, 22.
Like, for example, Will, like Lehigh, for example.
Yes, sir.
Most noticeable thing would be a semi-truck parked in the front yard of a house.
Yes, sir.
That would be a notice that they could self-initiate that, right? Knowing the truck's parked there overnight, it's a violation.
Correct.
Would they be able to self-initiate that then? And
Absolutely.
Make
Yes, sir.
contact? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So that's just one of the simple ones, a semi-parking front of a
Right.
house.
Or if the grass is too high and a violation of the lot mow ordinance.
And they probably look back at that address to see if there's a prior case there. There's always
Yes, sir.
initially complained about, and they just either pick up the original case, if it's been in compliance or not. They brought up a new case if it's not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Commissioner Polgo?
Just to piggyback on Commissioner Wayne's question, so staff-initiated violations, there must be some common thread to a type of a violation. I think that's what you're trying to get to. But based on your slideshow here, 40% of neighbor complaints or other complaints called in by the public are actually turned into violations, right? About 5,000 average, 2,000 cases. Staff-initiated, you have 100% success rate with violations created?
No, so these are the violations created from
Right.
this many complaints, and then these are staff initiated. So this is 25% of this number. This is the total amount. Or maybe I'm not understanding the question.
Okay, let me start over. So, public complaints submitted, average 5,000, just for an easy number, right? And 2,000 violations come out of that, so about a 40% actual violation created.
From the complaints that are created, yes, sir.
But based on the way your slide reads, staff-initiated violations are 100% success rate in creating cases?
Yes, sir. Because there's no complaint associated with them. They're just initiated by staff. Am I misunderstanding the question? I apologize.
So staff only initiates good complaints, I guess is what you're saying, right? They had enough case foundation to, when they file it, it sticks, right? Not just a neighbor complaining about the neighbor's barking dog, so to speak.
Give an example of a complaint initiated by the public, but it doesn't turn into a violation. See what I'm see what
Okay.
see what the,
So the difference between this number and this number you're talking about?
So we'll,
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
yeah, well, real quick, on the staff-initiated violations, the question is, do we have 100% close rate on those items, on those violations? That's the question. So here you got 40% based on complaints submitted. What is the percentage of closure on the staff-initiated violations?
So that goes back to our process overview when I mentioned the 90% abatement rate. 2023 and 2024 is our complete data set. 2025, the cases are kind of still going through this process that I've outlined. So it's not true numbers. We won't know the success rate, the abatement rate on those until possibly next year or the middle of next year. But for 2023 and 2024, the violations that were created, 90% of those have been successfully abated and closed.
Can you stick with this slide here for a minute, just to follow up, please? So out of this timeline, there's a lot of short-term timelines here, but the order of compliance period says up to 6 months. Is there not a fixed regulation for timelines? When it just says up to 6 months, what drives that?
The hearing examiner, so the statute outlines and our administrative code outlines that the hearing examiner is who sets the daily fine rate and the final inspection for compliance. And so that is determined by the hearing examiner. When we present the case to the hearing, they will provide an order finding violation confirming that the violation exists. They will set the daily fine rate, and then that the last final inspection is scheduled.
No, I'm glad we cleaned up that 1 yard that was a part of an earlier meeting. It was an 8-year-long ongoing issue, right? So I'm glad that
Yes, sir.
landed in the right place. But what can we do to support you to not have an 8-year category violation continue to stay in place? Or what do you do for habitual offenders that say the fine's not punitive enough for me to outrun my current business plan?
So I think some of the process improvements that Will touched on, especially for like nuisance accumulation, it's doing some of that outreach and the communication that's going to happen before we even get to the hearing examiner. So we're looking at early intervention. We're looking at process improvements that put a little bit more pressure on the person who has a nuisance accumulation even before it gets to hearing. So we're trying to tighten up that, and then holding them accountable and giving them a partner with one of our code enforcement specialists to help them through that process. And this was just something that hadn't really been pursued before. So in that 8-year process, we got to this lien filed, and then it sat there because the guy's going to live in this home forever. He's not going to move anywhere. If he's accumulating a lien amount, it doesn't really matter to him. And so, but having a code specialist show up, having the sheriff's office show up, and offering to provide assistance, he turned around and said, geez, I don't know what I would have done without you guys. I didn't know where to start with this mess. And so it's really having those conversations which we think are going to help, and providing the resources and connecting them to the right people to help overcome some of these things. And again, we're early in the process for these improvements, so we also need some time to be able to come out with some data and some metrics to see if there's anything else that we can do to help the process along.
I thank you, Commissioner Ham, for bringing this whole workshop up, and this was one of the triggers for that, so I'm glad to see we're making some progress.
No, and thank you, Commissioner, too. Yeah, I just want to affirm, I mean, I think that's the approach we're looking for, too. I mean, congratulations on getting that case closed after 8 years, but man, I think that's the whole genesis of this meeting today, is how can we not let those last for 8 years going forward? And another one we talked about was maybe a 5-year timeline. And again, congratulations, and we're so glad to see the cleanup, but now what could we do to talk about shortening that to, I don't know, even less than a year? How much of this process is prescribed by law? Is there any flexibility or discretion on our part to be able to shorten timeframes to work through the process quicker? Because, when you think about it, I think the neighbors who are, being affected by these properties would like to see responsiveness from us.
So we're working with the county attorney's office now, and we have been, to go through our processes and our templates for communication to see where we can tighten up some of those timeframes or provide alternate routes to quicken that process up. So we're providing what we're calling a 10-day letter. So you have 10 days to show some progress here, or we're going to be scheduling you for a hearing. Where before it was you have 30 days to comply, and then we would, schedule you out however long before you could get on a hearing examiner agenda. So now it's getting through this backlog, which the hearing examiner's office is helping us do by having those additional dates, but then prescribing a more prescriptive, if you are cited with a violation on this date, you're going to go to the hearing examiner on this date. That's the ideal scenario, is that we have a more prescriptive and more timely process that we can move through, so that we don't end up with these longer timelines.
Do you need us to vote on any new policies to make that happen, or is that something you guys can continue to do with the direction you already have?
I think it's something that we can do with the process, with the direction we already have, and knowing that we're in line with that direction that you've given us. As long as we're in lockstep together, we should be able to make some substantial improvements just going through our processes and making some internal updates to how we handle code enforcement within our department.
Again, I just want to reiterate kind of the genesis for why we wanted to have this meeting was, because I certainly feel very passionate about private property rights, and I don't want to turn Lee County into a homeowners association where we've got people sitting there, really causing a lot of heartburn for their neighbors. However, I do really worry about some of the scenarios we looked at with these nuisance accumulations and potentially squatters, right? People who may not even actually supposed to be in that property or in that property. And I want to try to get those worked through the system quicker because, I think an appraiser might tell you, well, if your neighboring property values probably academically speaking wouldn't really go down. But in reality, perception-wise, from buyers who would want to buy those homes in those neighborhoods, they're not going to want to buy next to a home that has bad nuisance accumulation and it looks like nobody's being responsive to the code violations that are out there. And so I think it's, it is a customer service that we need to provide to that neighborhood that, hey, we're going to hold these people accountable when they create a blight on the community.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the sheriff's department being here. This is probably one of our greatest resources. I know Will knows that in the office here in this building right now. So thank you guys for being here. And Commissioner Hammond, you're right. This 8-year, the 5-year timeline, we need to. I know there's a few houses like that, but it's not just the 1 yard, but the grass over an inch over tall. We don't want. I think none of us here wants to have like an HOA in the county. Nobody wants to live in that HOA with a Karen for a neighbor. But you want to have compliance. And I think we don't really want to. We're not really here to try to get fines. We're trying to find compliance. But the sheriff's department know, and I don't know if everybody wants to speak about it, probably 99% of these homes, if you have repeat offenders, it's either mental illness, hoarding, cat ladies, or crimes being committed. you have abandoned people, you have the drug house, and I know for my prior career, law enforcement and code enforcement was one of the greatest assets for having a code enforcement to get you in the house to get PC for a drug arrest for that probable cause. So I know they're working together. I just urge you guys to continue working with us. And I don't know who can answer this, Will or Mickey or Mark, as far as will we have in direct communication with the Sheriff's Department? Everybody here from the LCSO wants to speak about it too, because that's really one of the key components. Also having your guys have support when they go out to residents. And most of these homes are crimes being committed. They're either hoarders or they're committing crimes or stolen property or drug houses. And there's weapons there. So I'm glad the deputies are there, though. But my question is, anything from the Sheriff's Department you need from our staff today, or you want us to look at in the future, you need to help do your job or help provide assistance to our code enforcement? Anybody wants to speak on that?
I'll speak.
Yes.
Norfolk Myers area, we have a great working relationship.
If you could, can you go to the podium so we can have you on the record? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just so we have you on record. Come on. Don't you like the camera? Come on, we appreciate you now. We appreciate you. Mark's saying, I'm not going to go up there.
Absolutely. So good afternoon. My name is David Levitt. I work in our first precinct. So speaking on behalf of First Precinct for the Lee County Sheriff's Office, we find that we have a very effective relationship with the county code enforcement. Whenever I call him, he answers. Whenever he calls me, I answer. We're one of my people. So what you brought up, Commissioner Pendergrass, is very accurate about the different scenarios that we encounter, but we work through it in conjunction with Commander Canfield and his team with our homeless outreach, whether it's through the county or the Lee County Sheriff's Office. And we actually have different days where we do cleanups, we document it, and we get positive feedback from the neighborhood. But it is a process because of the different legal constraints that are placed upon us, and we work through them. So I'm happy to hear that you guys are reevaluating the different things that you can do, because anything you guys need, we make it happen.
With my office, we've been very, other than Derek Felder, I probably complain more than Lehigh probably he does personally, because a lot of the complaints, I call the complaints in because neighbors don't be anonymous. So I will call the complaint in to your agency or code enforcement, because the people usually, the violators are usually not voters, and they're a nuisance for the area, so I'm good with that. But we make sure we had an open line of communication with all of our offices with code enforcement. So we really appreciate your support. And my only question was, like, everything we do to help you guys do your jobs. So thank you for doing that.
The biggest thing I feel we have it is continuous communication. And I feel that we have a place to go to, because from we work together, City of Fort Myers Police Department. This is one of our best tools.
Don't tell them I trained you now. We don't want to go that far back.
You can see me slipping a $20 bill on the way up. No, seriously, our communication is fantastic, and as long as we have that, we're able to get it done. Right. And I'm not shining anyone on here. It's a fact. And you can tell because of the success, because you guys are being proactive. You're seeing something, and as our sheriff would say, you're saying something, you're making the call. And that's how we get around these anonymous situations, correct? We go out for a call for service, we see something, and depending on the total package, we call code enforcement, and we're able to work that circle out. So that's how we work around a lot of this anonymous opportunities, right?
Commissioner Book, I have a question.
I wanted to hopefully follow up on record that I had a little old lady that, there's a lawn care business going on, and there's 12 trucks and trailers getting dispatched and coming in every night and every morning next to her house, and it scared her to death. She didn't want to put her name on there because she felt worried about retaliation and didn't want to have a problem, right? And so I was able to work out where I could relay the complaint on that particular one.
Yeah.
Could we tell people that if they are in that situation, they could call in a non-emergency call to your office and help start the process rolling, where they felt safe, that you had their back before they had to just go on a public record website? Complaint.
Absolutely. It's ongoing now as we speak. We have a different online platform where people write in whether it's a compliment, an observation, or an actual complaint that they want to do, and sometimes they say they want to be left out of it. So we have different various online platforms as well as our non-emergency line to receive that type of situation.
What link would be the best one to refer them to?
So if on our public website, the Lee County Sheriff's Office, I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but on there, right, it says file a complaint. So it allows you to quick, put down your name, your phone number, your email if you want, your preferred form of contact, and it allows you to write a little summary about what you're talking about.
No, I know the law was written so that people aren't just calling in Hatfield McCoy's neighbors, picking on each other, but there are some legitimate safety concerns that I'm glad that you have a path to keep the residents safe. Thank you for that.
We find it very useful.
Thank you, Commander.
Thank you.
Quick question from Mickey and Mark. Is it possible, I think the Hex is here too, Don Marie, hi, how you doing? Is it possible, do we need maybe higher fines applied from the Hex, a higher threshold for fines? When some of these cases are long, repeated cases keep going up, would that make a difference with, as far as like finding compliance? If we had the Hex apply higher fines? I mean, I know we raised some fines already, but at that moment, when it goes to Hex,
Commissioner, I think in some cases, a higher fine imposition might help bring around compliance quicker. But I know Mickey referenced a case where someone was going to live in their house, they weren't going to sell it, put in a lien on it, it's not going to change that. So I think in some cases, a heftier fine might be compelling enough for someone to come into compliance. I think the work that they're doing with establishing communication with the residents and kind of, bird dogging them to come into compliance is probably more effective, but fines certainly would be helpful.
so when that opportunity happens, we raise the fines, now the fines are higher than the property value. The next step would be eminent domain. I'm glad the attorneys are here today, and I think Amanda's back there too, and Richard. So eminent domain, I know there's a different process to go through that process. We have that house in Estero, another one at Suncoast. The fines are already up there. You can keep having fines, it's not going to make a difference to the homeowner, or they're vacant homes. Where are we at with that as far as the process of expediting the eminent domain, taking the property and destroying it, cleaning up for the neighborhood? I know it's a cost to the county. Richard?
If it's non-homesteaded property, we can move forward and foreclose the lien and then take ownership of the property. The problem that we run into is for homesteaded properties, we are specifically prohibited statutorily from foreclosing against homesteaded properties. So for the resident living in their homestead, we're somewhat limited in the ability to we're prohibited in our ability to foreclose the lien against the homestead. We can move against other personal property or other real estate that individual might own, but as far as the offending property goes, statutorily, we cannot foreclose against homesteaded property.
Okay. So, and one more question about the fines, and the clerk's here, so maybe, I don't know, Clerk Carnes can maybe answer this too, or if we have somebody can answer this, or Pete. In the past, we've levied all these fines against the properties. How many fines we've collected? If we can maybe not have that answer today, but in the future. And where are we at? Are we actually collecting the fines when these fines are applied to a home? I don't know who could answer that question. Are we actually collecting these fines? If somebody has a $500 fine for grass, we have a $500,000 fine for 8 years of nuisance abatement. Have we ever collected those fines? And if we're not collecting, what process do we have to get those fines?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interject in that notion, even against homesteaded properties, once we file our lien in the public records, when that property sells or transfers, our lien has to be satisfied at that point of transfer. So in that case, then proceeds actually flow to the county, but that's upon the sale of the property or other conveyance.
If it's sold, but if it's
Correct.
been for 20 years and we don't get anything.
Right. Statutorily, our lien is good for 20 years.
Can property still be homesteaded after the homesteaded person has died? Because I guess I've heard of scenarios, and I'd have to go do some research to get the actual scenarios, but I've heard of scenarios where maybe the actual homeowner passed away, the home was vacant, some squatters moved in, and then obviously they let the place completely deteriorate, stacked up a bunch of vehicles in there and a bunch of nuisance accumulation. I guess I'm wondering, if those people didn't even belong in that house in the first place, why can't we just get them out of there and knock the house down?
You have to have a victim to trespass them, and that's the problem. I think somebody else wanted to respond to that. I don't know if Richard wants to respond first, but.
I just wanted to speak on the fine amount. My name is Ryan Old, the second precinct commander of the acres. So obviously that bright red area on the map you saw is my precinct. So when it comes to the
I'm sorry, can you go to the podium only because of the microphone, or, yeah, thank you, I'm so sorry.
Guys are going to learn.
Come on. Promotion day, Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. That's fine. I mentioned before and I kind of got sidetracked.
Like I said, good afternoon. My name is Ryan Law. I'm the precinct commander for 2nd Precinct in Lehigh Acres. Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Diaz and I had great communication together. He speaks with my CSOs all the time, probably on a daily basis. And one of the biggest concerns out in Lehigh, obviously, is commercial motor vehicles, whether it be on the easement or whether it be on private property. I know one of the problems, speaking with the citizens is when we tell them, hey, you can't have it on private property. Well, it's a $111 fine, $10 processing fee, so it comes out to about $122. Well, it's $300 for them to park it, to get parking at a commercial motor vehicle lot. So they'll tell us, well, I can get 3 of these before I need to go to a commercial motor vehicle lot. So that's one of the biggest problems. I know you touched on one of, is the fine amount, could that help us? And in my personal opinion, I think it could. Like I said, they're telling us that 3 citations is 1 month. So, 1 citation, if you hammer them right away, maybe they'll learn and go to a commercial motor vehicle lot, which is about $300 a month.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ryan, did you have a question for the deputy?
So, again, I think in the spirit, what I was initially talking about, and commissioners, you all covered issues, we all want to move this along quicker, okay? And I'm trying to understand the data, because honestly, if we have 75% of our cases are initiated by staff, to Commissioner Malka's point, how many of those are actually then, are we 90%, for those initiated? I'm trying to understand, how do we give you additional tools to expedite this process? We hear about 8 years, and I'm just trying to understand, how do we have the insight, how do we have any type of ability to pivot and say, okay, let's do this, that, or this? Fine certainly is an issue, but then you have the balance of, we're probably finding in areas like Lehigh Acres or some other areas where income may be an issue. So where it's effective, where you just indicated, the commander just indicated, that makes sense. But you also can get to a point in fines where it's not going to we're not going to get a resolution. The fine becomes so prohibitive, are we getting it resolved? I think all commissioners here want to get this resolved as quickly as we can. Right. And I'm trying to understand 8 years. I'm going to Pine Island tonight. The first question I'm going to be told is, we have something out there that says it's 9 months to 3 years for unsafe structures, but you go along Pine Island, you go into the island, there's a lot of developments that are still up there, so they're going to ask me tonight, it's over 3 years from the storm, I saw your presentation, what gives? So I'm trying to understand, like the rest of the commissioners, what can we do, and whether you want to look at each subsection of what code enforcement does and say, okay, in the commercial vehicle area, we need to change fines. In this area, maybe we need something else. I'm just trying to understand the tools and the policies we can make so we can obviously allow this process to be expedited, more efficient, and obviously more effective.
I think that was very well stated. And just to piggyback on that, I said, I'm just thinking, how did we solve the 8-year problem in the last 4 or 5 months since that case was brought to us? And whatever magic bean we use to solve that problem, how can we repeat that more often? What board direction do you need from us? What budget do you need from us? Do we need to make a recommendation with the hearing examiner on fines, or that's another meeting? But if we quadruple our fines from $250 to $1,000 a day, but we're still averaging $75, that doesn't play out exactly right. I don't know how to follow that exactly. But I would like to know how to repeat the success stories more often and give you the resources you need. So if you had a wish list for Christmas, today's the day to tell us.
Yeah, I agree 100%. What you just said, I was going to say the same thing. I'm open-minded to new policies, but I don't know exactly what those are or how to craft those. I'm looking to you to kind of recommend, since you're an expert who does this every day, recommend what new policies you would like us to consider, recommend what new budget items you would like us to consider, recommend what new coordination and programs you would like us to consider, because it seemed like what actually helped in the scenario where you had the gentleman who just didn't know where to start and how to clean it up, coordination and some wraparound services really is what it took. And so I guess I'm open-minded, but we need the recommendations from y'all.
I appreciate those points, commissioners, and we definitely appreciate the support. I think what we were trying to explain today is some of the things that we've just recently implemented is showing promise, and you're seeing those timelines shrink in these most recent cases. I think some of the average users you're seeing there, those stretch back years. So we're talking about 8 years for one case. That's not taking into consideration the things we've just done recently and the things we've implemented. So my point is, I think some of the stuff that we're rolling out now is going to have a positive effect. We're going to see shrinking of those deadlines. I think prior to us being able to come back to you with data and share with you where we need resources in these areas, I think we had a little time has to pass. We have to fully implement some of these processes and procedures that we've initiated and see what they bring. But definitely would like the opportunity to come back to you all and say, this is the results of what we've done thus far. We see some gaps, and these are some areas that we'd like to have a continuing conversation with you all.
Chairman, just if I may, a couple of thoughts perhaps to get board input to allow us to explore. Drawing an analogy to, say, the criminal justice system or even the civil trial system. You file a case in civil court, one of the first orders you get from the judge is a case management order that sets forth certain schedules, discovery timeframes, discovery cutoff, everything that goes into play, whether you're going to be ordered to mediation, and then you get a trial date. So one of the things that we may want to explore, if you all are comfortable with that, is perhaps coming up with some type of case management order, so to speak, that would lay out a time frame for the typical routine case. With the adder that if you have an individual case like the one gentleman that took 8 years because he didn't know where to start, well, that's a management issue that we could then take outside of that case management schedule. The other concept that we'd like to throw out is whether the board would be receptive to administration, our office, and the HECS working with a schedule of fines. And by that I mean, like, again, drawing on the criminal justice system, you have sentencing guidelines that the legislature creates that are then utilized by judges. Would you all be interested in us coming up with a potential schedule of fines so that the fine is geared toward compliance and the nature of the violation? And the gentleman that spoke from the 2nd Precinct brought up an excellent point, and that is, say, with commercial vehicle parking, our standard fine, it takes 3 violations to make up what that truck owner would otherwise have to pay on a monthly basis. If we have a schedule of fines that are set that say, okay, first offense is $200, create a financial disincentive for people to violate our ordinance and make that known so that when our code enforcement officers go out and find that offender, they can say, hey, our board has set for this type of violation, first offense is $250. So now your incentive is far less. So 2 concepts I throw out, whether you would like us to explore, because it would involve obviously administrative staff, our office, and the hearing officer.
Myself, I can support those ideas.
Well, good.
Yeah, I'm good. Along the same lines, I'm just trying to look at each use, permitted use, commercial vehicles, unsafe structures, nuisance. What else can we do to give you the necessary tools to see if there's any way to shorten the time frames? Is that fair?
It appears at face value on that chart, 50% of the timeline is HECS and 50% of it is
Notice,
staff.
right, notice and statutory time requirement.
And as an overview to that statement, Commissioner, I would say 90% of it is driven by statute. That we are constrained by statute to provide X number of days between notice and time to correct, notice of hearing, and then the hearing officer has to afford a statutory time frame as well. But we can certainly take a look at the scenario that you laid out, and unsafe buildings fall under a different ordinance that we can bring back and also lay out that time frame as well.
Mr. Chair, that's health and safety.
And if I may, to your point, Commissioner, I think once we get those processes in place and we start to see the gaps that we have in each of these areas, our plan would be to come back to the board and have a discussion regarding those issues and potentially what decision points the board can make, or also potential funding that we may need to fill in those gaps. So I think we put some processes in place that we think are going to work, but obviously there's potentially going to be gaps there as well. So I think we're prepared for that. We just don't know what they are yet until we get this implemented.
County Manager, I agree. What I was trying to do earlier is just try to understand the different issues. The commander certainly gave us a specific issue.
Yes.
$300. If I have an understanding of each subsections and what are the things that we can do to increase, your tools, give you more tools in the toolbox so we can expedite that, whether that's budget, whether that's timeframes, whether that's additional fines, whatever the case may be, if we have clarity on what the impediment is, we can address the impediment.
Yep.
That's all.
Understood, yep.
There were great examples today, but if there was a couple of examples in each subsection, we would have a greater understanding of what we're trying to do.
Sure.
Question, just to, I like where you're going with this, and if we know the number is $300, because that's, because you're 40% of the cases, and you're smiling down every day to our team, then maybe, are we allowed to say that the minimum fee for a violation is $300 now?
Commercial vehicle, it could be $500.
Or $500, or whatever, can we do with the, can the board give that direction?
Yes.
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 Okay. So we can make the first violation punitive, not lucrative for them to park in the front yard.
Correct.
It's good to know. I'm open to those ideas. I know we can't vote anything tonight.
Like I said, at the end of the day, I think we're not trying to raise money, we're just trying to make compliance.
So we want them to
And
do
help
not
business,
intend
right.
to break the rules.
So bad the guys are just trying to work and drive a truck to, supply, income for their family, but they need to find a place, their owners need to find a place to park the trucks, not in their residence, so those companies they're working for should be able to find parking for those trucks.
Commissioner, one other major issue that we deal with, similar vein, is individuals running commercial operations out of residentially zoned locations. And there you have the same scenario, that it's cheaper to pay our fine in many cases than it is to pay commercial rental prices. So, I would hope, and it's always been the sense of the board, that our goal in all these cases is compliance, but we also recognize that certain violators, like the one I just mentioned, should be treated differently than, say, the 85-year-old grandmother with no resources. That we always maintain that flexibility to extend assistance to solve that, as opposed to just, we're going to hammer everybody.
100% agree. So, one last follow-up question, please. The nights and weekends subject was broached in the review in this today. Does our staff have to witness the violation, the truck parked there, or can the deputy be the person that witnesses the violation if they come home after dark and they leave before sunup? Is there a way to mitigate that?
Well,
Yes, sir. Our staff, state statute is very explicit that the code inspector has to provide the evidence in a hearing. And there's no public, no testimony from the public in a code enforcement hearing. So it's statutory that our staff have to obtain the evidence that the noncompliance exists. So in your scenario, our staff would have to work the weekends or overnights or after hours to witness the commercial vehicle in a residential property to obtain photographic evidence to provide to the hearing examiner at a hearing. If it gets to that level, if it gets to a hearing, we have to provide the evidence that we obtained to the correct. No, sir. No, it has to be from a code inspector. The statute explicitly says code inspector. Yep.
Well, do you need resources from us to have more night and weekend coverage to support you in this? Should we explore that? Give staff the...
I was going to ask that question. That's been one of the roadblocks over the years, is having code officers on after hours or nighttime and the weekends. So I don't know who wants to respond to that, but I personally like to see that. So is that a staffing issue, or is it a scheduling issue, or what?
Commissioner, thank you for that question. Will is currently working with our human resources group to determine how we can offer some flexibility to our employees so they can work after hours as well as during the weekend. So we're working through that. And that's the intent, to have people that are working outside of our normal business hours to catch some of these violations.
And we had two new positions last year. Do we need more positions?
I think going back to the response before, I think some of these new initiatives, we'd like to see what the results are. We're really high on them. We think they're going to provide some good results to us before we ask for more resources. Allow us to collect some data to see how these improvements work, but we'd like to open up the opportunity to have future conversation about additional resources with you all.
Mr. Wayne? Oh, I'm sorry. Commander?
Real quick,
Here, grab a microphone. Grab a microphone. Turn it on.
Commander Flynn of 5th Precinct, the fellow officer rule, would that be something that we could be as a force multiplier to you? That we could write a sworn statement as a fellow officer and say that we've seen the violation? Is that something that can be worked through? Because if not, if that is possible, then you just really increased your workforce.
I'm not familiar with that rule, but it's something that,
So code enforcement, why with a deputy?
No, well, fellow officer, as far as when we're dealing with another agency and we come upon something that we encounter that they didn't, or vice versa, we're able to do a sworn statement and they can make an arrest or do a statute based on our observations that they did not observe. So a DUI or something like that that we saw, not necessarily in maybe our county or precinct, that we can testify to that in a sworn statement and it is upheld in a court of law. If that is something that the sheriff's office, I don't want to speak out of turn, Alan, if that's something that we can assist with, if that's something that we can assist with, or is that is a tool that can help the county, that is something that might have merit.
I think it's something worth exploring. I'm not familiar with that rule, but I think it's something worth exploring. We may have to collaborate with the county attorney's office to make sure that we are complying with all of the statute 162 that governs our authority and operation. So,
Under the heading of be careful what you ask for, we couldn't necessarily apply the fellow officer rule because the statute talks about code inspectors. One way around that would be to name all of your deputies as code inspectors.
Thank you. Okay. Any other? Dave, you got what you need? You need more? Any more direction?
Yes.
Regarding nights, weekends, staff resources.
Correct.
Fines,
And
increased fines?
coming back on details for each of those areas, specific areas, yes.
Anybody else have anything? Great workshop. Thank you, Will. Good job.
thank you. Thank you for your
I think
time.
I think you should have Will do all the board meetings in the future.
All right.
I think he likes the attention.
I'm down with that, Will.
I appreciate the compliment, sir.
Anybody else have anything else? Good? Okay. We'll be adjourned. Thank you.